As I said in the preamble, we will not be posting the full text of each of the requirements, but requirement by requirement. I will ask you to read it before commenting on it. So when I quote a requirement and you hear this little bell, followed by this tally, it will indicate that you need to read one or a few sentences of the standard for the requirement we're going to see. I can reassure you that the count is more than enough for you to take the standard, read it, possibly get stuck on certain terms that are sometimes formalized in a strange way, and finish reading it before the explanations in this training video continue. I will now leave you a few seconds to take the standard to get to paragraph 4, which concerns the context of the organization. As I presented in the generalities, this paragraph presents the requirements for adapting, designing, and understanding the management system in relation to the specific context of the organization. One last thing before we start, and which concerns you. If you like this huge work for us to make this knowledge available in a qualitative and free way, give us the means to continue by liking, sharing, and making our channel known. It is very important. Let's start with the requirements of paragraph 4.1, understanding the organization and its context. The issues that have an influence on the management system and its results must therefore be defined and formalized. The standard does not describe what the issues are, but requires them to be identified and proposes in the appendix some examples. The issues concern major elements or factors that influence the choices of the organization. For example, issues related to biodiversity, regulatory, cultural, social, political, economic, local, or regional issues, etc. For example, and more precisely in an environmental management system, an issue may exist if the company is inserted in or close to an area with a specific environmental characteristic, a reserve, a protected area. Its choices will take this characteristic into account. Increasingly, strategic issues of involvement and image are aimed at an important interested party, the general public, who have become vigilant about the environmental impact of the companies and brands to which they turn. These stakes have been defined. It is therefore necessary to demonstrate how they have been taken into account and what actions, if any, have been decided upon. Now, the requirements of paragraph 4.2, understanding the needs and expectations of stakeholders. For each interested party, I refer you to the previous video as to the definition of this term. It is therefore necessary to determine their needs and expectations, including when these needs and expectations concern legal requirements. Once these needs and expectations have been determined, it is up to the organization to ensure that they are met if it deems it necessary. For example, the interested party of a local fishing association, because the organization would be close to a river, may need to be approached in order to seek their opinions, their possible expectations, and above all, to engage in discussions to demonstrate its concern for doing the best in environmental matters. This is followed by the requirements of paragraph 4.3, determining the scope of application of the environmental management system. A rather long paragraph for a very simple result. The so-called scope of application is the formal identification of the field of activity carried out under the management system. This is what all the requirements of the standard apply to. Because, indeed, it could be that the requirements of the ISO 14001 standard are deployed on one geographical site and not another. On the other hand, what is allowed for other standards when activities or services are excluded from this scope is much more difficult or even impossible or illogical within the framework of ISO 14001. Indeed, it would be surprising to apply environmental considerations, impacting air, soil, and water, for some products or services and not for others. Finally, in this Chapter 4, the requirements of paragraph 4.4 Environmental Management System are presented. This family of requirements simply requires you to implement and improve an environmental management system, a way of saying that if you want to apply the standard, you have to apply it. The notion of process as it is addressed here does not systematically impose to describe and formalize the processes under a relatively classical approach like ISO 9001. However, this is very practical in order to design, share, and communicate on the management system and all its provisions.
Pof, pof, pof.